They raided Mar-a-Lago, Trump's home in Florida, yesterday. Let's read a little bit about it. From Reuters, explainer, Trump says FBI is raiding his Florida estate. What legal woes does he face? August 8th, former U.S. President Donald Trump said on Monday that FBI agents raided his Mar-a-Lago estate in Palm Beach, Florida. Law enforcement officials did not immediately respond to requests for comments on Trump's claims. The focus of the investigation was not immediately clear. Here is a look at some of the probes and lawsuits that Trump faces. Missing national records. The U.S. National Archives and Records Administration in February notified Congress that it had recovered about 15 boxes of White House documents from Trump's Florida home, some of which contained classified materials. Let's just look for a second at the way that's worded. They recovered because Trump sent them back. The U.S. House of Representatives Oversight Committee at the time said it was expanding an investigation into Trump's actions and asked the archives to turn over additional information. Trump previously confirmed that he had agreed to return certain records to the archives, calling it an ordinary and routine process. January 6, attack on U.S. Capitol. A congressional panel probing the January 6, 2021 assault by Trump supporters on the U.S. Capitol is working to build a case that he broke the law and trying to overturn his 2020 election defeat. Vice Chair Liz Cheney has said the committee could make multiple referrals to the Justice Department seeking criminal charges against Trump, who accuses the panel of conducting a sham investigation. So Congress, who's supposed to only do investigations for legislative purposes, is going to seek criminal charges against Trump. Doesn't seem like a misuse of power at all. In a March 2nd court filing, the committee detailed Trump's effort to persuade then Vice President Mike Pence to either reject slates of electors for Democrat Joe Biden, who won the election, or delay a congressional count of those votes. Something that Trump was trying to do was enact something that's in the Constitution that allows him to do that. And heaven forbid he talked to Mike Pence about his role in it, where he could actually be the person. Anyway, Trump's efforts likely violated a federal law making it illegal to corruptly obstruct any official proceeding or attempt to do so, said David Carter, the California federal judge overseeing the case. That'd be like he obstructed an official meeting of the president when he is the president and he says, "We're going to call this meeting. I'm sick of talking to people." And there would be him interrupting an official proceeding, because heaven forbid if the president did anything to interrupt an official proceeding by the Congress. In March 2nd filing, the committee said it was likely that Trump and others conspired to defraud the United States. They said it was likely. The law criminalizes any effort by two or more people to interfere with government functions by deceit, craft, or trickery. In addition to Trump's efforts to pressure Pence, the committee cited his attempts to convince state election officials, the public, and members of Congress that the 2020 election was stolen, even though several allies told him there was no evidence of fraud. There was no evidence of fraud, just that several states had changed their laws improperly without legislative authority and had mail-in ballots that could be sent in days later to count days later after the official election results would be considered over. But, nobody points out the fact that it's obvious that these states changed the way that they were taking ballots due to COVID. The committee cannot charge Trump with federal crimes. That decision must be made by the Justice Department, led by Attorney General Merrick Garland. If the Justice Department brings charges, prosecutors' main challenge will be proving that Trump acted with corrupt intent. No doubt. Trump could defend himself by arguing he sincerely believed that he won the election and that his well-documented efforts to pressure Pence and state election officials were not meant to obstruct Congress or defraud the United States, but to protect the election's integrity. Could that possibly be the reason? Trump also could be charged with seditious conspiracy, a rarely used statute that makes it illegal to overthrow the U.S. government by force. To prove this, prosecutors would need to show Trump conspired with others to use force, said Barbara McQuaid, a law professor at the University of Michigan and a former federal prosecutor. Yeah, I'm sure that by all his actions, we can say that he was attempting to overthrow the U.S. government. It sounds like he's a foreign entity and he was just trying to just take over by force. That's why he, obviously ordered people to storm the Capitol and the military to go in. Oh, wait, that didn't happen. Multiple participants in the January 6th assault on the Capitol have been charged with seditious conspiracy. Democrats said in a June hearing of the January 6th committee that Trump, a Republican, raised about $250 million from supporters to advance fraudulent claims in court that he won the election, but steered much of the money elsewhere. So here we are with, he's not allowed to go to court, make these claims. He's not allowed to investigate it. Can't use the money for any of that kind of stuff. This raises the possibility he could be charged with wire fraud, which prohibits obtaining money on false or fraudulent pretenses, legal experts said. They determined that it's false pretenses for him to raise money under that, spend money under that. Georgia election tampering probe. A special grand jury was selected in May to consider evidence in a Georgia prosecutor's inquiry into Trump's alleged efforts to influence the state's 2020 election results. The investigation focuses in part on a phone call Trump made to Georgia Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican, on January 2nd, 2021. Trump asked Raffensperger to find the votes needed to overturn Trump's election loss, according to an audio recording obtained by the Washington Post. Legal experts said Trump may have violated at least 3 Georgia criminal election laws, conspiring to commit election fraud, criminal solicitation to commit election fraud, and international interference with performance of election duties, or intentional interference. Trump could argue he was engaging in free speech and did not intend to influence the election. New York criminal probe. Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan District Attorney, has been investigating whether Trump's family real estate company misrepresented the values of its properties to get favorable bank loans and lower tax bills. 2 top lawyers who have been leading the investigation resigned in February, throwing the probe's future into question, but Bragg's office has said it is ongoing. Trump has denied wrongdoing and said the probe is politically motivated. Bragg is a Democrat. Here we are once again where real estate developing is one of the parts of the tax code that is very lenient. These are the people that get basically enough write-offs and everything else, depreciation of properties, that they typically don't pay any taxes. And that's all legal. That's what happens in that industry. People don't pay taxes typically for that. They have all these loopholes and stuff that they do and they get out of, which, here's another example of, because of what he did, they're going to go after that and try to show that as like, oh, he was being unethical and everything. Taking advantage of tax write-offs. That's what every red-blooded American does when they have the opportunity. Does a presidential run mean Trump can't be prosecuted? No. While the Department of Justice has a decades-old policy that a sitting president cannot be indicted, there is no such protection for presidential candidates. But they do have a policy where they're not supposed to release these kind of things, that there's an investigation and stuff like Comey did to Hillary, where he comes out and basically hinted that there was going to be charges and stuff like that on her. And that affected probably the outcome at least a little bit, and was James Comey pretty much breaking that policy by even having a press conference about it. Law enforcement agencies don't release that kind of information. They don't come out and say, hey, we're investigating. That's something you always wait until you have more information, that the person's going to get charged. And in this case, here we are again. We're coming right up on the midterms. We know Trump's going to be a candidate. Pretty much everyone assumes that. He's did everything but officially announce it, and yet we have this kind of stuff. Prosecuting a candidate could nonetheless have political implications. I'm not aware of any constitutional reason why a presidential candidate would have any kind of criminal immunity. New York Attorney General civil probe. New York State Attorney General Letitia James is conducting a civil investigation examining whether the Trump Organization inflated real estate values. Trump and 2 of his adult children, Donald Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump, agreed to testify in the probe starting on July 15th. Trump has denied wrongdoing and called the investigation politically motivated. This is Letitia James basically went into office with the idea, before she was even elected and when she was running, that she's going to do everything she can to bring down Trump. She had basically said that as part of her campaign speech, very clearly that she's targeting him. and it's political, because before you get hired for the job, you have no information that anything has been wrong. There's any wrongdoing with the Trump family, yet you come at it from that approach that I'm going to make sure that I find something. Doesn't sound political at all. E. Jean Carroll's defamation case. A former Elle magazine writer sued Trump for defamation in 2019 after the then president denied her allegation that he raped her in the 1990s in a New York City department store. He accused her of lying to drum up sales for a book. The Second U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in Manhattan is poised to rule on whether Carroll's lawsuit should be dismissed. And she's the one, I believe, that's been on the news, and she's said some really crazy things talking about it. I'm not even going to go into that because it's so weird, some of the things that she has said. She's clearly not quite there. A lawyer for Trump has argued that he is protected by a federal law that makes government employees immune from defamation claims. What else we got? Trump says FBI search the state in major escalation of probe. So it's clear that they're going after the records, and one of the things that is coming out in this unannounced raid is that they're looking for these records that supposedly contained classified information. You may remember back what happens with a past president is they are granted the ability to get intelligence briefings, at least things that can affect them, and that they could, a current president can go back to a past president and say, I need your opinion on this. How did you handle this the first time? Give me some more detail about it. Typically, past presidents still have that ability, at least for in the short term, to get access to that kind of stuff, to still be briefed. President Biden removed that from Trump, and keep in mind that we're talking about documents that Trump had the power when he was president to declassify stuff. He could say, I'm going to declassify this, and then actually put it out. He can't be a leaker of classified information, and as a former president, he should still have access to that kind of stuff. And if this is concerned about documents that he sent back to the National Archive, then, what is the problem here? We're playing games with the idea that he should have access to nothing. He should have his security clearance revoked. Anything that he may have that he knows about is dangerous. And this isn't the way this is played for a past president, and certainly not for somebody, that's going to be making the news now that his home was raided, hinting at allegations of he's done something wrong for a person that's a major presidential candidate. This isn't like I announced that, I'm running for president, and he was like, well, that's not going to protect you. This is somebody that was a president. I don't know how they can do this and how they can expect that it's fair to take the former president of the United States, who's clearly a candidate in 2024, and put him through a ringer on all this little stuff, hinting at it that it's big stuff. FBI searches Trump's Florida home as part of presidential records probe. So that's what some of the mainstream media is saying, but let's hear from the New York Post. The New York Post says the Trump raid not about classified documents, it's about January 6th. The court-authorized search of former President Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate is another unmistakable signal that the Justice Department is trying to build a criminal case against him arising out of the Capitol riot. Ostensibly, the search relates to a long-simmering dispute between the former president and the government over Trump's potential illegal retention and mishandling of classified information. But don't be deceived. National Archives officials alerted the Justice Department months ago regarding missing records and possible classified information violations. That owes to the chaotic atmosphere in which Trump family decamped to Florida from the White House following the Capitol riot, with impeachment proceedings and even talk of removing Trump from office under the 25th Amendment then underway. Reportedly, about 15 boxes of records were removed from the White House and shipped to Mar-a-Lago. The National Archives subsequently explained that much of the material should have been kept in the government's possession pursuant to the Presidential Records Act. After extensive negotiations, Trump agreed to return some of the materials in January 2022. Upon receipt, National Archives officials advised the Justice Department that the returned materials included classified information. Oh my. Because pretty much any of the documentation that the president creates could be considered classified information. If true, that raises several issues. If Trump had not declassified these materials while he was president, then his continued possession of them in a non-secure location was probably illegal. While presidents have unilateral authority to declassify intelligence, they only maintain that authority while in office. It may not be exercised in the post-presidency. The returned documents thus were potentially evidence of crimes. In addition, since it's believed that Trump did not return everything that was shipped out from the White House in those hectic days of January 2021, there was significant reason to suspect he continued retaining classified information at Mar-a-Lago. One of the potential law violations under Section 2071 of the Federal Penal Code includes in its penalty provisions that, upon conviction, a defendant shall forfeit his office and be disqualified from holding any office under the United States. The ongoing proceedings implicating Trump, in particular the Justice Department's investigation and the House January 6th committee probe, seem geared toward undermining his capacity to seek the presidency again in 2024. Obviously, then, there is speculation that DOJ may be mobilizing now in order to trigger the Section 2071 disqualification. I doubt that. The Justice Department well knows that the qualifications for a presidential candidate are set out in the Constitution. They may not be altered by statute precisely because the framers did not want the executive branch to be dominated by the legislature, as would happen if Congress could disqualify incumbent or potential presidents simply by passing a law. Separation of powers, right there. Checks and balances. The Constitution qualifications for the presidency are minimal. One must be over 35 and a natural-born citizen. Being a felon is not a disqualification, so even crimes potentially far serious than mishandling classified information are not a bar to seeking the presidency. Moreover, the Constitution also prescribes the basis for disqualifying a person from seeking the presidency or other federal office: conviction by the Senate on impeachment article voted by the House. Again, what is prescribed by the Constitution may not be altered by a mere statute. To trigger disqualification, Congress would have to impeach and convict Trump. It cannot be done by criminal prosecution. The Justice Department obviously used the potential classified information as a pretext to obtain a warrant, so it could search for what it is really looking for: evidence that would tie Trump to a capital riot offense, either a violent crime such as seditious conspiracy to forcibly attack a government installation, which is highly unlikely, or a nonviolent crime such as a conspiracy to obstruct the January 6th joint session of Congress to count electoral votes, or conspiracy to defraud the government. So the question here is, do we think that Merrick Garland's doing the right thing? Obviously, Director Wray and Merrick Garland, Attorney General, would have to have known about this to get the warrants for the search, which would require that they have some kind of probable cause that a crime has been committed. You can't just do a search just because you feel like it. You got to have some kind of indication. It's probably with the records, where I don't know how the National Archive could know what wasn't sent to them if they got 15 boxes of material sent back to them. I don't know how they could know, oh, there's stuff that's missing from this. If you know what's missing, then you should have known what to request. And it seems like just further proof that we have a government that's targeting Trump. They're scared that he's going to run again, and I believe he is. And this is nothing more than that. You even have Meghan McCain saying, if they don't have the goods, this unprecedented raid is proof the deep state wants to destroy Trump. How ironic they've made him a martyr and a better bet than ever for the White House in 2024. I think that there's one of two things that can come out of this. I think either they're set in their mind that they are going to find some kind of charges and try to remove him as a potential presidential candidate, or if they're not able to do that, they've strengthened his position because Trump does nothing but talk about essentially the deep state trying to get him. And I think this shows further proof. I don't know what your feelings are on it, but the way they're treating a former president and the way they're treating someone that's going to very clearly be a political opponent, this is the Biden regime's biggest opponent in the coming election, and he's been running around the country supporting all these Republicans and stuff to run against Democrats in the midterms coming up in just a couple of months. And they're doing everything they can to shut him down. Seems to me that, the mean tweets and everything have pushed them a little too far. Marco Rubio, Biden is playing with fire by using a document dispute to get the Justice Department to prosecute a likely future election opponent, because one day what goes around is going to come around. And then we will become Nicaragua under Ortega. Biden and the Dems are following in the footsteps of all third world communist dictators that the left worships. And I think that's the best way to explain it. You know, this is nothing short of Banana Republic kind of stuff, that you would try to prosecute someone. You think about all these countries that have, you know, overthrown leaders and former presidents that were corrupt. You know, what do they always do? The new person comes in and they arrest their political opponent, put him in jail. Or house arrest, whatever. You know, this is the kind of thing that shows that we're very unstable right now. You have a large majority of the public doesn't believe the election was handled properly. They know that even though there's no direct hard evidence that Trump would have been the victor, which I think is the holdback to a lot of this stuff, you have a lot of people that are very clearly looking at the election and saying there's a lot of things that we did wrong. People don't feel secure in the elections. And if people don't feel secure in the elections, then they're not secure. If you don't at least have a majority of people saying, yeah, that was completely fair and everything went smoothly, then there's a problem that needs to be corrected. Because you got to have faith in your election system, or you become more, I don't want to say extreme and all that other stuff, but you have a lot less respect for your government and the officials in the government, which I think is what's exactly going on right now. We don't like Congress. They have a very low approval rating. Politics leaves a nasty taste in everyone's mouth. And where do we go from here? Like I said, this is going to work out one of two ways. And I guess go ahead and leave your comments and stuff underneath this video. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to be charged? I think they're going to try to charge him. I think they're going to try and do something like that. I think it's only a matter of time. There's a lot of posts people are believing the FBI is planting evidence right now as we speak. And that could be true too. I mean, there's a lot of bad apples, I think. I think we all know the FBI, the DOJ, they're corrupt. They have serious issues with the way they handle integrity, the way they handle investigations. You can't come for the mom and pops that are, you know, going to the school board and saying CRT sucks. I want it out of my school. FBI investigation. You get a threat tag. You're a possible domestic terrorist. It makes no sense to treat people like that and come at it with the approach that, you know, Republicans bad. They are able to play these word games every time, and I think we might even need to get to that more as Republicans and conservatives and even independents that are conservative. Start putting the label back on them, because if we don't figure out a way to do that and kind of play that game, they have control of media, social media, the news cycle, obviously key government positions. You know, how do we fight back if not playing the same kind of games they play? So they go low, we need to go low. It's as simple as that. And like I said, leave a comment. Please like and subscribe. I appreciate the people that have been watching my videos and subscribing. I need to get to quite a lot to start kind of monetizing everything. And so I would appreciate your support. You know, please pass this information on to your friends. If you like my videos, if you don't like my videos, say so in the comments. Give me some constructive criticism. And I'll try to get better and better at making videos. I appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by.